The forest is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet enough to hear your own attention moving. Sometimes it is so still that even the idea of being watched feels like a sound. Tonight, as sleep begins to take hold, we journey into the foggy space between folklore and fear. If you're listening under moonlight or nestled in the quiet of your room, feel free to share your setting in the comments. These stories take on new life when we hear where they're being dreamt. This is the tale of the Leshy, a spirit of the old Slavic forests, not a horned beast, not a skull-faced monster, but a humanoid presence, tall, thin, moss-covered, sometimes mistaken for a tree until the moment you realize it is not. Settle in, breathe deep, and let your thoughts drift into the unknown. Welcome to Fairytales After Dark. In older villages at the edge of the woods, people learned early that the forest has rules. Not written rules, not spoken ones. Rules you feel in your body. Where to step, where not to, when to turn back, when to stay quiet, when to leave a place alone. A hunter might know the trails by heart. A gatherer might return to the same clearing year after year. A woodcutter might recognize each birch and pine as if they were neighbors. And yet, there were days when the forest seemed unfamiliar. A path that should have been there was not. A stand of trees felt thicker than usual. A hollow that had always echoed now seemed to swallow sound. Those were the days people spoke of the Leshy, not with panic, with caution. The Leshy belongs to the forest the way wind belongs to grass, the way roots belong to soil. He is not a visitor. He is a presence, sometimes described as the master of the woodland, sometimes as its keeper, sometimes as its temperament made visible. In the oldest tellings, the Leshy appears as a man who does not quite match the proportions of ordinary life. Too tall, too thin, too still. His skin might be gray like bark or green like lichen. His hair might look like dried grass, his beard like moss. His eyes might be pale or leaf dark or shifting, never holding light the way human eyes do. His clothing is not always clothing. Sometimes it is only the forest arranged on him, fern, twig, leaf, a drape of shadow that reads as a coat until you look again. Sometimes he is described wearing boots on the wrong feet, or leaving footprints that do not match what should have made them. A small detail that turns certainty into doubt. Most versions agree on one thing. The Leshy is a master of mimicry. He can imitate voices, the voice of someone you know, the voice of a child calling from deeper in the trees, the voice of a friend who stepped ahead of you, the voice of a spouse or sibling, calm, familiar, close enough to make you turn your head without thinking. Some say he mimics animals too. The snap of a branch that sounds like deer, the soft scrape that sounds like boar moving through brush, the rustle of leaves that feels like something large passing behind you. These sounds do not always mean danger. They mean attention. They mean the forest is adjusting itself around you. The Leshy does not always harm. That is what makes him difficult. In some stories, he misleads only those who disrespect the woods, those who curse too loudly, those who cut trees carelessly, those who take more than they need, those who whistle at night, those who mock the old rules. He does not punish in a human way. He disorients, he confuses, he rearranges the forest until arrogance runs out of fuel. In other stories, he misleads for reasons no one can name, because the forest is not obligated to be understood. A man walking home from a neighboring village might take the same route he has taken for years. He might see the same stump that marks the turn, the same stone that sits half buried at the trail's edge, the same birch that leans like a listening shoulder. Then the mist thickens, or the light shifts, or the birds go quiet, and suddenly the path becomes a loop. He passes the same stump again. He sees the same stone again. He realizes he has been walking in circles without choosing to. Later, when he reaches home, he cannot explain where the hours went. That is the Leshy's signature. Not violence, not spectacle, a calm theft of direction. There are also tales of stillness. A woodcutter pauses, axe resting against his thigh. He feels the sensation of being observed. He looks up. He sees a tree trunk where he did not expect one. Too close, too tall, its bark looks damp, its outline too straight. He blinks. He realizes the trunk has shoulders. He realizes the moss is hair. He realizes the branches are not branches. They are arms held against the body. So motionless they have borrowed the posture of wood. The Leshy does not rush. He does not leap out. He does not roar. He simply stands, watching, as if he has been there the entire time, as if you have only just become capable of noticing. This detail feels older than the later dramatic versions. The antlers, the skull, the exaggerated terror. Those belong to modern imagery. They entertain. The older Leshy does not entertain. He teaches a quieter lesson. The forest can contain something that looks like it has always belonged, because it has. People developed ways to respond, not guarantees, practices. Some said you could escape misdirection by turning your clothes inside out, by swapping your shoes to the opposite feet, by making yourself strange enough that the forest stops recognizing you as the same person. It began confusing. Others said you should carry bread, or salt, or leave a small offering, not as payment, as acknowledgement. Some said laughter breaks his spell, not mocking laughter, the kind that releases fear, the kind that reminds you you are alive. Others insisted you should not whistle, should not shout names into the trees, should not chase voices, should not follow a familiar call if the forest feels wrong. I tend to trust the simplest rule: do not follow a voice you cannot see, because the Leshy does not need claws to be dangerous. He only needs you to take one more step in the wrong direction. Now, as your breathing steadies, imagine the old forest in late evening. Not a bright forest, a dim one, a place where trunks stand close, where the path narrows, where the air smells like damp leaf and dark soil. You pause. You listen. You hear a voice that sounds familiar, close, gentle, calling as if from just beyond the next line of trees. And there, beside the trail, a tall, thin figure stands. So still you mistake him for a tree, until you notice the shape of his shoulders, until you notice that the moss is hair, until you notice that the stillness is intentional. The Leshy is not chaos. That is the mistake many later tellings make. He does not act randomly. He does not erupt without reason. His misdirection follows patterns, and patterns imply rules. In the oldest Slavic folklore, the Leshy governs a forest the way a shepherd governs land. Not by force, but by presence. The forest remains wild, but it is not unmanaged. Trees grow where they will. Animals move as they must. People are allowed to pass through so long as they remember they are guests. Most encounters with the Leshy begin when that balance is disturbed. A man enters the forest already angry. A woman cuts wood without asking. A group shouts too loudly. A traveler mocks the old warnings. Nothing happens immediately. The forest does not retaliate. It waits. Then the path becomes unclear. Sounds begin to echo strangely. Landmarks appear twice, or not at all. The Leshy does not confront. He redirects. In some villages, it was said the Leshy could stretch or compress the forest at will, making distances longer than they should be, or collapsing long walks into a few disorienting minutes. A clearing that should be close becomes unreachable. A path that should lead home curls inward instead. These are not tricks meant to terrify. They are corrections. People who learned quickly were released quickly. Those who panicked made it worse. A common tale tells of a shepherd who followed his flock into the trees at dusk. He had done this many times before. The sheep moved calmly. The bells rang softly. The forest felt ordinary. Then the bells stopped sounding one by one. The shepherd followed. The trees grew closer together. The air thickened. The path narrowed. When he finally found the sheep, they stood in a tight circle, silent, staring toward the center. There was nothing there. The shepherd backed away, slowly, without shouting, without crossing the circle. He left the forest before night fully settled. He never lost sheep there again. This restraint matters. The Leshy does not require fear. He responds to awareness. Another story speaks of a woodcutter who worked alone. He noticed a man standing between the trunks. Tall, thin, covered in what looked like moss and leaf. The man did not move, did not speak. The woodcutter assumed it was a trick of light, or a tree seen from the wrong angle. He returned to his work. Later, he realized he could no longer hear his own axe striking wood. The silence grew heavy. The air pressed inward. When he turned again, the man was closer, still unmoving, still watching. The woodcutter left his tools behind, walked calmly away, and did not return that day. When he came back later, his tools lay exactly where he had left them, untouched. He took that as permission. In some regions, the Leshy is described as playful, but this play is not harmless. It tests boundaries. He might lead a person in circles until exhaustion. He might swap directions. He might turn familiar sounds deceptive. He might allow someone to wander until humility replaces frustration. Then, quietly, he releases them. Children were warned about him differently. Parents did not say he would eat them, or kill them, or drag them away. They said he would take them wandering, that he would walk them deeper into the trees, that they would forget which way home was, that they would follow laughter that did not belong to anyone they knew. These warnings worked because they felt plausible. Children understand being lost. Some stories say the Leshy protects animals. Others say he herds them. Some say he quarrels with neighboring Leshy spirits, fighting by uprooting trees, shaking the canopy, sending storms rolling through the forest. In these accounts, fallen trees and sudden wind are evidence not of random weather, but of territorial dispute. Even here, the Leshy is not a monster. He is a force of order clashing with another order, the forest responding to itself. One consistent belief remains: the Leshy cannot leave the forest. He may approach its edge, he may stand just within the shadow line, but he does not cross into open fields willingly. His power thins there, his shape becomes less certain. This is why people who escaped misdirection often found themselves suddenly at the tree line, as if the forest had pushed them gently outward, then closed behind them. There is an old saying: the Leshy walks backward, his footprints point the wrong way. This is not always literal. Sometimes it means that following signs without thought will lead you away from where you intend to go. Sometimes it means that certainty itself can be misleading. The forest does not speak in straight lines. As night deepens in the story, the Leshy becomes harder to notice. He blends more fully. Trees become silhouettes. Moss darkens. Stillness multiplies. The forest looks empty, and that is when attention matters most, because the Leshy does not announce himself. He allows you to pass by him, close enough to feel something is wrong, without ever confirming it. That uncertainty is his final lesson. Now, as your thoughts slow further, imagine standing on a narrow forest path. You pause, you listen. You hear a familiar voice behind you, soft, calm, almost kind. You do not turn, you do not answer, you wait. The voice fades, and when you step forward again, the path continues as it should. As the stories widen, the Leshy becomes less about a single encounter and more about a way of being observed. He does not stalk, he does not pursue, he does not rush. The Leshy notices, and in the old folklore, being noticed by the forest is not always a punishment. It is sometimes simply a consequence. Villagers believed the Leshy knew the forest, the way a person knows their own body, which branch would bend, which root would trip, which hollow would echo, which clearing would feel wrong at dusk. He did not need to move to guide someone astray. He only needed to allow the forest to behave as it naturally would. This is why so many accounts describe confusion without fear. A man realizes he has been walking for hours, but does not feel tired. A woman hears her own footsteps behind her. A hunter follows tracks that suddenly end at bare ground. None of these moments feel dramatic. They feel quiet, dislocating, as if certainty itself has thinned. The Leshy rarely touches those he misleads. Touch would be too direct. Instead, he alters perception. Distance stretches, sound bends, familiar shapes refuse to resolve. The forest does not change, the mind does. In one account, a traveler recognizes the Leshy only after passing him. He recalls seeing a tree standing too close to the path. He remembers thinking nothing of it. Later, He realizes the tree had been watching, not moving, not turning, simply aware. The recognition comes too late to be useful, but not too late to be instructive. This detail repeats often. The Leshy is noticed in retrospect. People return home and realize something had been wrong, that they had felt it, ignored it, continued anyway. This is why the Leshy unsettles without terror. He does not force danger, he reveals inattention. Older storytellers understood this. They did not describe him as cruel, they described him as exact. A man who respects the forest may still be misled, but he will not be harmed. He will be tired, humbled, perhaps embarrassed, but returned. The forest corrects, it does not destroy. Those who panic fare worse. Panic narrows attention, it accelerates movement, it turns small mistakes into deep wandering. The Leshy does not create panic, he allows it to run its course. In some villages, people said the Leshy laughs, but not loudly, not in mockery, a dry sound, like leaves rubbing together, like bark shifting. A sound that could be dismissed as wind if you needed to dismiss it. The laughter does not follow misfortune, it follows recognition. The moment someone realizes they have lost their way, that they are no longer in control, that they must stop and listen instead of pushing forward. There is a human moment often repeated in these stories. A person stops walking, not because they know what to do next, but because doing nothing feels safer than choosing incorrectly. They sit on a fallen log or lean against a tree. They wait. The forest does not respond immediately. Time stretches. The pressure eases. Eventually, a path appears that was not visible before, or sound returns, or light shifts enough to show direction. The Leshy does not guide them home. He allows the forest to release them. This is not mercy. It is balance. Later interpretations tried to sharpen the Leshy into something more monstrous. Antlers were added, size exaggerated, teeth sharpened, drama inserted. These versions travel well. They frighten quickly, but they lose the original weight. The older Leshy does not need decoration. A man who can stand so still, he becomes part of the forest, is more unsettling than any creature that announces itself. A voice that sounds exactly like someone you trust is more dangerous than a roar. The lesson survives because it remains applicable, even now. People lose direction without leaving the woods. They follow familiar voices. They trust surfaces that conceal depth. They move quickly when stillness would reveal more. The Leshy does not belong only to forests. He belongs to moments when attention drifts. Now, as your breathing deepens, let the forest of the story grow quieter. The figure among the trees does not move. He does not follow. He does not advance. He simply remains part of the place he has always governed. If you listen closely, you might hear nothing at all. And that, in the oldest stories, is when you are safest. By the end of the older stories, the Leshy is no longer something to be encountered. He becomes something to be recognized. He does not need to appear again. The forest itself carries his presence, in the way paths narrow without warning, in the way sound changes with distance, in the way a place can feel suddenly unfamiliar, even when nothing visible has changed. The Leshy teaches that the woods are not empty, they are attentive. This attentiveness is not hostile, it is indifferent to haste. People who learned to move slowly fared better. Those who paused, who listened, who accepted uncertainty without trying to overpower it, found their way sooner than those who pushed forward with confidence. The forest does not reward certainty, it rewards awareness. There is a story told quietly in some regions, about a man who entered the woods to search for another who had gone missing. He followed the path until it dissolved into undergrowth. He felt watched. He sensed direction slipping away. Instead of pressing on, he stopped, sat down, waited. He did not call out. He did not chase sounds. He allowed the forest to settle around him. When dawn came, he stood, turned, and walked out by a route he did not remember entering. He never saw the missing man, but he returned safely, and he did not enter the forest again without intention. The Leshy did not intervene, the forest did. This is where the legend rests most honestly. Not in threat, not in spectacle, but in relationship. The Leshy is what the forest becomes when it is treated as background instead of presence, when movement replaces attention, when speed replaces listening. He is the embodiment of the moment the land notices that it is being used without being seen. In this way, the Leshy is not a monster, he is a correction. Older storytellers understood this. They did not seek to banish him. They sought to coexist. They taught children not fear, but orientation. How to recognize when a place was asking for restraint. How to notice when stillness carried meaning. The forest did not belong to people. People belonged briefly to the forest. As time moved forward and villages expanded and roads were cut straight through old growth, the stories softened. The Leshy became decoration, a figure for tales, a name remembered more than respected, and yet, the experience never vanished. People still step into places where certainty thins. They still feel watched without seeing why. They still lose direction, not because the path disappeared, but because attention wandered. The Leshy remains relevant because he reflects something unchanged. Perception matters. Now, as the story loosens its hold, let the forest return to quiet. The tall, thin figure does not step forward. He does not retreat. He remains exactly where he has always been. Indistinguishable from the trees, indistinguishable from the place itself. There is no need to leave an offering tonight. No need to turn your clothes inside out. No need to test old rules. The lesson has already been carried. Slow down. Listen longer than you think you need to. Do not follow a voice you cannot see. The path will reveal itself when you are ready to notice it. As your thoughts drift, the forest of the story dims, shapes soften, distances lose urgency. Nothing waits for you among the trees. Nothing follows you from them. The watching presence dissolves back into bark and moss and shadow. What remains is calm, not emptiness, but order restored. Settle in, breathe deep, and let your thoughts drift into the unknown. This has been Fairy Tales After Dark.